Hello again. This is our lesson on percents to fractions. This is one of the most difficult. There's a couple. This is one of them. So this is where students will find it challenging. Here's the rule. So to change a percent to a fraction, you place the number over 100. So you place the number that's the percent number. So for example, this number over 100, and then you reduce the fraction. So the word reduce, I have to kind of review that each year, but reducing a fraction is as follows. If I had a fraction 3 over 6, this fraction is not reduced. It's not reduced because these numbers are both divisible by another number. These numbers are both divisible by 3. When you can divide both the numerator and the denominator, or the top and bottom number, by the same number, they both divide by 3, then you must do it. So 3 divided by 3 is 1, and 6 divided by 3 is 2. So in other words, 3 out of 6, or 3/6, is really the same or is equal to 1/2, but 1/2 is reduced. So you must always reduce fractions. It's kind of like an unwritten rule that I tell students. So 15 out of 20, we look for what number can I divide both 15 and 20? What are they both divisible by? And most students know they can see 5. They know that both numbers divide by 5. And what I say to students is, anytime you see a number that ends in 5 and 0, those two numbers will divide by 5 simply because they end in 5 and 0. So 15 divided 5 is 3, and 20 divided 5 is 4. So 15 out of 20 is equal to 3/4, but 3/4 is reduced. Okay, so place the number over 100 and reduce. So let's go right ahead. We've got 45%. Place 45 over 100. And now I must reduce it. Once again, ends in 5 and 0, so these numbers both divide by 5. What do they have in common? They both divide by 5. So 45 divided by 5 is 9. 100 divided by 5 is 20. And that is reduced because 9 and 20, you cannot divide them by any common number. There's not a number that is divisible, is going to divide both of them. Okay, we have 128%. Take 128, put it over 100. Now we look to reduce. So what number divides both? Most students can see, and they already know, that if a number ends in 0, 2, 4, 6, or 8, or in other words, if they're even numbers, they will always divide by 2. Now there are shortcuts. Some students say they see other numbers that are larger than 2, and that's fine, but I'm thinking like very low level here, thinking they both divide by 2, so I'm going to do that. So this is 64. 100 divided by 2 is 50. So this first initial reduction is from 128 over 100 to that. Now I look again and say, what number do these both divide by? And once again, I know that they're even, so they both divide by 2, so I'll do that again. And so 64 divided by 2 is 32, and 50 divided by 2 is 25. And I look again, can I divide them again by anything? Maybe by 2, maybe dividing them by 3, dividing them by 4, dividing by 5. You just kind of keep going up, divide by 6, etc. And it looks like 32 over 25 is the lowest fraction, lowest terms. Okay, and that's what we do. Okay, next one's interesting. So we have to take this number and place it over 100. So we have 0.34 over 100. Well, that doesn't look right. We don't ever have fractions where the numerator or the top number is a decimal. So here's what you do. You have to move that decimal to the far right. Always to the far right. So in other words, if I move that decimal to the far right, I'm moving it twice over, as you can see. I have to move it 2 places to the right. So if I do that, this number changes to 34. It's no longer 0.34, it's now 34. Now, whatever I do to the numerator, I need to also do that to the denominator because otherwise the answer would change. So whatever I do to the top, I do to the bottom. So I will take this 100 has a decimal right there. I will move this decimal also 2 to the right. And when you have blank space like this, when you move it over twice into blank space, you add a couple of zeros. So in reality now, this number is not 100, it is 10,000. So I have 34 over 10,000. Okay? Now we must reduce, because as I said, place the number over 100 and reduce. So I've done that, placed it over 100, I had to move my decimal, now I reduce. Students can see that since this one ends in a 4 and a 0, they're both even, they both divide by 2. So I'll divide them both by 2. And you get 34 divided by 2 is 17. And 10,000 divided by 2 is 5,000. Now I know right away that this cannot be reduced simply because there is no number that these two can be divided by. 17 is what's called a prime number. 17 is prime. Prime means that it's only divisible by itself. So 17 will only divide by 17 and also by 1. It'll divide by itself and 1. So 5,000 doesn't divide by 17, so it's not going to divide by any other number. So that's it. It's done. Okay, this one over here. 86 3/4. Okay, we have a fraction portion that we need to get rid of. We have to change this fraction to a decimal. And from a previous lesson, we learned that if you divide 3 and go 3 divided by 4, you will change this to a decimal. Most students already know that this is 0.75. So in other words, I have 86.75%. So I'm just rewriting it here. Instead of 86 3/4, I have 86.75%. Okay? Now, since it's a percent, now I'm going to follow the rule, right? Place the number over 100 and reduce. So place this number over 100, 86.75 over 100. Okay, what do I do? This looks kind of weird to have a decimal there. It needs to be to the far right. So I'm going to move it over once, twice. And changes that to 8675. Whatever I do to the top, I do to the bottom. Right? So move this decimal, which is right here, once, twice. So it is 10000, 10,000. Okay, so now I want to divide both of these by a common number. They both divide by 5. And when I divide them both by 5, I've got 1735 on the top. And on the bottom, I've got 2,000. Divide them both by 5 again, correct? Because they both divide by 5. And when I do that, I get, I'll put it down here, 347 over 400. And I can tell you, just because I know that a number like this, 347, is not going to have something in common with 400. They both will not divide by a certain number, so it is reduced. Okay, so that's that. This one, 202.8. Notice it's already has the decimal, so it's not like the previous one, so I don't have to change it. I just have to write it over 100. So it's 202.8 over 100. This doesn't look right, so I have to move the decimal once to the right. I want to move it always to the right. This time it only moves once. Whatever I do to the top, I do to the bottom. So I have 2028 over 1000. So I have 2028 over 1000. I want to reduce both of these. I know they're both divisible by 2. So I will get 1014 over 500. And I'll bring the answer down here. These both divide by 2. because they're even numbers, right? 4 and 0. So this is 507, and 500 divided by 2 is 250. Looking carefully, 507, 250. I don't think I can reduce that any further. There's no number that will divide both, so we're done. Okay, final one, 360 and 4/5. Here's one with a fraction. We have to convert this fraction. We have to make it a decimal like we did for this one, remember? We changed the 3/4 to 0.75. So let's rewrite that as 360. And if you divide 4 by 5, you get 0.8. So it's 360.8%. Just rewriting the percent, okay? So from here, I'm going to just rewrite it to that. Now, using the rule, take this number, put it over 100. So I'll just write down here. So 360.8 over 100. We need to take this decimal, move it to the right. So this becomes 3608. And this, because I moved it once, I moved this once. The decimal was there, so it becomes 1,000. Now we need to reduce. Divide these both by 2. So we get 1,804 over 500. Divide these again by 2. You get 902 over 250. This is why students have a hard time with this. They just struggle with their number skills, some of them, and so it's difficult. But we do allow the calculators to aid them. So divide these both by 2 because they're both even numbers. So you get 451 over 125. And it looks like with a number like 451, this is the final answer. Again, students don't know where to stop or when to stop as they're not sure, but this is why percents to fractions are difficult. But I hope this helps, this little lesson. Nice thing about video, you can review it, go back and see it over and over again until you finally get it to sink in. So I hope it helps.